welcome everybody, and thank you for being here today. You know, we're so very fortunate to see so many friends and family, old and new, and to be here for the reason we are today, of course, celebrating Mom Julia's life. And what a great setting to do this. You know, having not been here before, I just think the Anvil Center is just fabulous, and I hope to be back here under better circumstances at some point. So thanks to Ben and Dave for setting that up. It's funny because I've been called like 4 different things here this afternoon. Bernard Jr., Bernie Jr., BJ, Beach. I've been known as different things to different people at different times, but today I'm really damn proud to say that I'll always be known as Julie's firstborn son. And what a day to be losing my voice. What's going to happen here this afternoon is I've just got a couple of thank yous and welcomes to do. 1 or 2 very brief stories about an obvious connection we have between Mom and the beautiful presentation that we're going to be rolling out that was lovingly put together by my brother John and daughter Ashley. I saw it last night. I was on the fence about whether or not I wanted to see it ahead of time, and I can't wait for you all to see it. It's just fantabulous. In fact, it's so good, we're going to show it twice. Not twice in a row. We're going to show it near the beginning here. We're going to have a few speeches. We've got a few set people, a couple of stories to tell. There will be an open mic segment if anybody wants to share any recollections about Mom. You're certainly welcome to do so. That does not have to be here at the podium. We have a guest mic which we'll bring to you. And then right after the last speech, thanks Dix, which will be my brother Ben, if he has any words left. We have something special to do, and we'll roll out the presentation again at the end for those who want to sit through it, and for those who perhaps came in late here today. And for those of you that like to plan your naps, I can tell you it runs only 13 minutes, and every bit of love that was attached to it from John. John, thank you so much. And Ashley is going to be up there on the screen, as you're going to see in just a few short moments. A quick couple of welcomes we want to do to our out-of-town guests, notably the West Coast contingent of the Doyle family. Every U.S. state in the West Coast is represented here today. We've got my cousin Susie from Salinas, California. Susie, where are you?
West Coast.
Right. Next to her, my cousin Diana from Ashland, Oregon, beautiful part of the U.S. And we've got several guests here from Washington State here as well, notably my Uncle Bob, thank you for being here today, Kathleen and Dana and Debbie, and Bob Jr. is here somewhere. I think I saw him, I don't know, way up there. And am I missing any West Coast Doyles? No? Okay, good. And lots of friends from out of town too. I know that some people have come from Calgary, is that right, Ben? And we have some from as far back as Toronto, is that right?
Except I think they might have just left.
Oh, except they may have just left, and that's too bad because we actually had a prize for the person who came here from the furthest distance. So who would that be? Salinas, California. Anybody come further than Salinas?
Barb, are you still in here?
Oh, Barbie was your ringer, right? Okay. Salinas, California, beautiful spot near Monterey. Where do we have?
Saskatoon.
Okay, who wants to Google that for me? Is Saskatoon further out than Salinas?
I think it is. Yeah.
It is? Come on, one of you must really want this prize. Susie, I think it's going to you.
Yeah.
And it's not a case of Meyer Lemons, don't worry. But we do have, straight from the Sunshine Coast, for being the furthest person here today, a bag of Julie's favorite cereal! Holy crap! Nice souvenir. Actually, I think that was her least favorite cereal. I know that because one day she greeted me at the door with it after she'd gone through about 2 spoonfuls of it. I'd come over from the Sunshine Coast, and she handed me the bag at the door and just said, "Here." Also want to do, sorry, my phone just about died here with my notes. Mention the fact, this expounds a little bit on something that my brother said at the church. You know, Mom, Julia, Julie, Jew, Mumka, she was many things to different people. She may have died knowing that the world was not nearly the safe place it was when she came into it almost 86 years ago. And to paraphrase something the Pope tweeted off of the horror that happened yesterday in France, the Pope tweeted this morning, "How do you convert those that are blinded by hatred?" And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if any of us do, but it made me think of Mom immediately, because if there was ever a person who was blinded by love, it was her. And that extends to everybody in this room here today. The woman really was all heart. In fact, I tried to narrow it down to one succinct quote that I thought would really sum up what Mom, certainly to me and perhaps to all of us, all of you here today, was really all about. And it actually came from The Wizard of Oz. And maybe it's been like 50, 100 years since some of us have seen that movie, but the quote came near the end of the movie when the Tin Man finally gets his heart, and the wizard hands it to him. And as he hands him his heart, he says, "And remember, my sentimental friend, that a heart is not judged by how much you love, but by how much you are loved by others." That is who she was, and that is what she leaves us today. Before we get to the presentation, just a few family thank yous I want to mention, and if I miss anything or anybody, it's not to marginalize anything, it's just, I've been pulled in 1,900 different directions today, and I've been basically having a new emotion every 5 seconds, if you know what that's like. But Tony and Diane, where are you? You know, the way you've stepped up for Mom in these past years has just been nothing short of remarkable. And I'm thinking specifically to 2 stints. One was in late 2008 when she stayed with you for an extended period of time. And I know you didn't even begin to tell us, to hint at how difficult and challenging that was. But the fact that you never looked at it as a challenge, I think, is a real blessing. I really do. And more recently, I can't eyeball Tony. Where is he? Oh, okay. More recently, I know we thanked you last Christmas for what you did last year, but that's just like 1/10 of our gratitude. Just, you know, I'm really at a loss for words how great you guys have been to Mom over the years, but specifically with those 2 instances, from all of us, I just want to say thanks. And John and Angela Atticus, of course, I know John has been countless times by virtue of the fact that, you know, I'm a ferry ride away. It's a proximity thing, but I know you've stepped up for Mom in countless ways, countless times, and I just think that's just amazing, the way all 3 of you have been there, as I know she's been there for you, too. Ash and Mike, of course, you know, and Mike, thank you for cleaning out her fridge. You know, I went over the Sunday following Mom's passing, and that was actually on my to-do list, God, I got to clean out the fridge or task that to somebody. And I got there, and Mike had already gotten it done. You have to understand that Mom didn't have a fridge, okay? She was running a food museum. I mean, best before was not a concept to her. There was some
Really old.
Oh, I thought you said moldy stuff. Okay. It may seem like a little thing, but thanks for taking care of that. And just the way I know that road is run both ways, that Mumka has been there for you. And I'll save some more thank yous personally for later. There's one more I want to mention, but just to expound on one thing that Ben did say at the church. Yeah, you know what? That lady was a warrior. She lived the last 15 years of her life free of cancer. And some of her friends were not nearly as lucky. And those that were lucky, I know, are grateful, but it also touched many members of her family. And I don't want to belabor the point too much, but she lived knowing that two daughters-in-law had been impacted and had both come out of it doing well. More recently, her sister-in-law, Diane, and it even touched her first grandchild. And, you know, you're warriors all, too. You really are. And I will compose myself at some point, but I just wanted to save another thank you for Dave and Karen, of course, the countless times that I know you guys and the unspoken times that you've been there for Mom, especially in the last couple of years. And Karen, I know I thanked you. Where's Karen? I know I thanked you personally this week. Just the selfless way you were there for all of us. We really appreciated that. And again, not to marginalize anybody's contribution. There's tens of thousands of other ways I would like to thank people, but I do want to make mention of my brother Ben. You know, September 16th, 1968 was my 10th birthday. And it was also the day my brother was born. And I can't think of a better birthday present I could have got. And Ben, if Mom has been this family's angel, you have been the angel advocate. Everybody, please, let's give it up for Ben, please. Now, my intention to bring you up right now, I know we're going to hear from you before the end of the day. What few words you have left? 30 seconds. Okay, timer's ready. So now we're going to come to the presentation part of the afternoon. And again, this is something that was assembled through a series of photo submissions from all the family that was somehow distilled through John and Ashley into the 13 minutes we're going to see very shortly. And there is a Beatles connection to the presentation. I just want to make sure I get this right. The connection with the Beatles, well, there's a couple of stories, very quickly. One having to do with Paul McCartney, no, two having to do with Paul McCartney. When the Beatles performed at Empire Stadium, August 1964, and I think at least one person here was at that show. Diane? The 64 show, Empire Stadium? Oh, you're outside the fence. Oh, okay. Tried to get in. Right. Saw the little Beatles through the knothole. Dad was glued that night to the radio coverage. Live coverage on CKNW. Red Robinson and whoever else were just sort of trying to encapsulate the mayhem of the Beatles being in Vancouver. To the point where he let his cigarette dangle a little too long and almost burned the house down. He got up to get a drink, and Mom screamed at him, "Bernie, the chair's on fire." And sure enough, his cigarette ash had fallen down the side of the brand new chair, and it ended up going up in flames. So it really was the hottest concert in town that night. And the other happened years later. 48 years later, Paul McCartney came back to Vancouver. Ben, you've been lucky to go to many live shows with Mom. I only got to see one, and that was Paul McCartney when I treated everybody, a select group of family, to tickets to his show in November 2012 at BC Place. The show was sold out within 10 minutes, and I was so excited I got off the line with Ticketmaster that I didn't look carefully at my ticket receipt. I thought I was getting 4 rows from the bottom of the upper section, and here it was 4 rows from the top of the nosebleed section. And if you can imagine the specter, and that's what I'm going to call it, of this woman with a cane at the time being made to walk all the way from Granville in Georgia into BC Place, and me telling her, "It's right at the bottom of the upper section, Mom. don't worry. And then finding out we're near the top. Here's this woman with a cane, followed by her little personal mafia behind her. Half the people cheering her on. It's Paul McCartney, it's gonna be worth it. Me, like, gonna be seen. And finally, when the show was over, just saying to her, Mom, we got to see a Beatle. You know, we'll always be able to cross that off the bucket list. And how glad she was for that show, and also to hear Paul perform Let It Be, which we're not going to hear tonight. The other connection has to do with John Lennon. October 9th, aside from sharing a birthday with our cousin John, who's here, John was born on Julia's 50th birthday. October 9th, aside from Julia and John's birthday, is also John Lennon's birthday. And he was born the day that Mom turned 10. And I know that when John Lennon was murdered, I happened to be on the air that night in Winnipeg when I was working in radio, and how there she was for me the day later and consoling me, because I was just completely blown apart that something like that could happen in front of his own house. John Lennon, as it turns out, also lost his mom at a very young age. He said it was one of the most tragic things he ever had to go through. And he was actually raised by his Aunt Mimi for years after that. And he struggled with how to remember his mom for years, until finally he came up with a fitting tribute, which, if you're familiar with the Beatles catalog, was actually included on the Beatles' White Album, which is the segment we're going to be using to open this presentation. John Lennon's mom's name? Julia.
Hi, thanks again for all of you for coming. This is John, you did a hell of a job with that, man. And Ashley too. You guys did great. That was really good. That was very moving. Mom would have loved that. At this point, we're going to open up the microphone for anybody out there who wants to share a story, amusing anecdote about Mom. I'm going to call my Uncle Bob up first to come up to the podium. Afterwards, if you're not comfortable with the podium, don't know how to work it, but I've got a mobile mic and I can come to you. So, Uncle Bob, if you can lead us off, that'd be great.
I've forgotten my lines, but I have a book here, and the book is Healing After Loss. And I'm going to read one or two passages from that. But whoever said that life doesn't matter, whoever said that death doesn't matter, and it does matter. And I think especially when Julie was in her last few days and her whole immediate family was there. And that's very unusual, but it's very wonderful that happened. And there was probably some other people there, maybe from the S&B clan, Stitch and Bitch, for those that are not aware of that particular group. The Go-Go's, the grandmothers in Canada now. But anyway, I do have a couple of passages from this I would like to read. Real grief is not healed by time. If time does anything, it deepens our grief. The longer we live, the more fully we become aware of who she was for us, and the more intimately we experience what her love meant for us. Real deep love is, as you know, very unobtrusive, seemingly easy and obvious, and so present that we take it for granted. Therefore, it is often only in retrospect, or better, in memory, that we fully realize its power and depth. Yes, indeed, love often makes itself visible in pain. And there was a lot of love expressed in Ben's talk today. And Vern, BJ's up here. A lot of love in this room right here for Julie or Julia, whichever you prefer. I'm kind of reading this in memory, not in memory, but to pay tribute to my brother, the only other living Doyle out of the 5 members, except for our brother Gordon, who was kind of a half-brother, but a really staunch brother. But my brother Norman, who was the youngest of the 5 original Doyle boys, Norman is not doing real well right now. He's in Connecticut, and he's kind of not real healthy at this moment. But we're hoping that he'll get well in the next few days. But another one of the passages here, time elapses differently for the bereaved. It creeps every minute, had been so fraught, so filled with emotions, events and high drama. Each day has passed like a week. And I'm sure some of you are feeling that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Very, very well spoken. And, I just want to say again, what a marvelous job in the presentation that Ashley and John did. She's very much in the room with us here today. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Ben also alluded to, I think it was because of the church, we were in the church that you said S and B. You didn't say stitch and bitch.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying.
Okay. But among Mum, Julia, Mumka, Auntie's, Jew's writings, where she did a little origin story about the Stitch and Bitch Club and the original members, some of whom are not here today, but we have the daughter of one of them here to graciously volunteered after I coerced her to read that story. It's Kathy Stewart, who's Noni's daughter, one of the original Stitch and Bitch members, is going to read that origin story here. Kathy.
Thank you, BJ. I actually used to babysit all 4 boys. I was the babysitter when they lived next door, and actually when they were in New West too. I think.
I don't remember that.
No, you were gone by then. I think it was just the little ones that were left. So I guess Julie actually wrote this, and actually I just started calling Julie 5 years ago. I always called her Mrs. Doyle, and she said, "Kathy, please call me Julie. You make me feel old." So I always was called Mrs. Doyle to me. So this was written by her. In the early 1960s, our local parish asked some of the ladies if we could form a sewing group to look after the altar boys' cassocks. And we agreed, as we enjoyed each another's company. We met monthly in one another's houses. But in 1964, my husband Bernie's insurance company, his employer, transferred him to Victoria to be the regional manager of Upper Vancouver Island. We sold our home in Coquitlam, and along with our 3 sons at the time, decided to go for it. Victoria didn't seem so far away, just a ferry ride. But when we had to come back in a hurry due to illness or death in the family, it was difficult, although the boys enjoyed the trips back and forth. In 1968, while in Victoria, we added 1 more son to our family. Then in 1969, we were transferred back to the Lower Mainland. This time we purchased a townhouse in Surrey, just across the river from New Westminster. This is where my husband's area to pursue new businesses would be, with 4 to 6 salesmen working under him. I was looking forward to joining the sewing group once again, only to find out it was no more. I told the ladies there was a Stitch and Bitch Club in Victoria, and I suggested we start our own. Once again, we began to meet monthly for dinner after we put our young children down, sending them off to bed as we pursued our Stitch and Bitch activities. That was the way it happened. We'd take turns hosting dinner parties. We'd feed the children first, and our husbands would make themselves scarce. We enjoyed many great times together. We limited our membership to 8, as it was the perfect number around our dining room tables. There were a few others who wanted to join, but we wanted to keep things as we started. Every now and again, on special occasions, we would invite other friends to join us. In 1973, our city of New Westminster was asked to co-host the Canada Summer Games, and when one of my husband's friends, a coordinator of the Games, heard about my group, he phoned me to ask if we could man the sewing rooms. I asked some of my friends, and we agreed it might be fun. Well, we did not know what we were in for. The first 2 days, we sewed about 250 crests just in time for the opening ceremonies. Our president at the time, Marg, the good sewer, even ended up sewing repairs in the ripped crotch areas of many articles of clothing. When some of the young people went shopping, they would even bring their blouses and other items to get altered. We were so busy that Margaret had to call on her friend Louise, who later came by grumbling that she had to leave her fridge half defrosted just to help, and that she wasn't even a bitch. For our next meeting, we had Margaret send her a special invite. The outside read, "You are invited," and the inside read, "To be a bitch." She obliged, of course. During the Summer Games, one of the athletes from Newfoundland spoke of Newfoundland screech, which we had never tasted. So one afternoon, he brought us a sample. Needless to say, we didn't get our sewing done that afternoon, but we had a lot of laughs. Our group started out doing quite a few crafts and Christmas decorations. I still have some of them. We filled boxes for the poor and even sponsored a girl in Haiti for about 10 years. We started with bridal showers, then added baby showers, birthdays, anniversaries, picnics, and more. We also filled 18 to 20 photo albums over the years, and every now and then we bring them out to reminisce. Sadness marked 2003 as we lost 2 members, one to heart disease and the other to cancer. We have many fond memories of them both, and we can also clearly recall their courageous battles not to give in to their illnesses. I would be remiss if I didn't try to describe our members in some way, and these are what she wrote about each one. Noni S., forever loved and missed. Pat H., forever loved and missed. Marg Mick, President Phone Lady, and the one who sends cards. Has anybody ever got one of Marg's cards? They're quite something. Sylvia D., secretary, keeping our records in order. Louise H., our best storyteller. Mary M., keeping us in stitches. Marg D., the nicest Irish lass on earth. Helen B., hostess of many pool parties until they moved to Kelowna. And Julie D., me, the bossy one who started it all. Bitches or not, I think we are all pretty special.
Hi everybody, my name is Ainsley. I'm a really good friend of Karen and David's. Karen has prepared a beautiful speech, and I'm going to read this on behalf of Karen and David. My name is Karen Doyle. I am David's wife, and I like to consider myself the favorite daughter-in-law. I know Angela and Judy probably have a problem with this, but it is my speech, so for the next 5 minutes, it's about 1 minute, I am the favorite. I have been part of the Doyle family for a short 21 years. When I first met Julie, she welcomed me with open arms. I never did get to really see what she looked like because she was cooking up a storm and her back was to me the whole time. But even being as busy as she was, she had plenty of time to drill me with questions. The first question after saying hello to me was, "When are you getting married?" The next one was, "When are you having babies? When are you?" And the last one was, "Where are you running off to?" I should have run like hell out of that door at the very minute, but I stayed. I needed to find out what all the fuss was about with her cooking that kept Dave raving about. It was very much worth my staying. Julie knew that one of my favorite things that she made was her cinnamon buns. She would make them whenever I came over. She even had Bernie deliver a bunch to me at work when I started my new job. I got an email last week from a lady in one of my jewelry classes, reminding me of the incredible treats that Julie sent to class with me one day. She took some home and her husband raved about them. I spent time with her learning to make her cinnamon buns and kringle and also Chinese food. Mine have never tasted as good as Julie's, but then again, I guess I don't make them with the love that she put into everything she did. Julie was always there for anyone that needed her. She loved to plan the big parties, and everything was an event. When I received my degree, she had a huge party for me in her community room. Even now, Dave said, "Mom, Karen doesn't want a party." Well, you know how that goes with Julie. She puts her mind to something, and it is a done deal. It was a great party, and I could tell how proud she was of me at that moment. Julie was a great sister, sister-in-law, grandmother, mother-in-law, and friend. But the thing she was better at than anything was being a mother to her 4 boys. She loved her boys unconditionally and was always there for them for whatever they needed, whether it was a shoulder to cry on or to celebrate with them. She did a wonderful job raising her boys. You can tell by how kind and caring each one of them is. She did a wonderful job. Julie will be dearly missed by everyone whose heart she has touched over the years. And Bernie would say, "Look at her, isn't she pretty?" That's Karen's speech.
But she was always full of lots of love for me, and love has been talked about a lot today, and I don't think there's anybody who crossed her path who didn't feel her love, for sure. Thanks.
I make a lot of presentations like this, but when I did this one, I just didn't expect so much emotion to come up, and one of the toughest things was deciding which pictures not to show, because we had probably about 700 pictures to go through, and it had to reduce it down to about probably 200 or so. So but luckily my niece Ashley is still speaking to me, because it was really hard for her. I'm not going to take much time. I just have a few thoughts I want to share. I've come to believe that it's impossible as parents to avoid annoying your children in some way. And whether we want to or not, as parents, we're going to unknowingly step on unsuspecting toes sometimes. And it's bound to happen. And some parents do this by nagging over and over again. And some don't say anything and they just explode and lose it. And they, in an honest attempt to try and help their kids, but and that happens sometimes. And I'm not so good at that part myself. But my mom did neither of those things, and it's true she had expectations for us, and she would let them be known to us, and not always directly to us, sometimes to another one of us. And that happened throughout our lives. And it wasn't that long ago, when she was asking me, like, when was the last time you washed your hair, or something, or actually, even just a few weeks ago, she was offering to take me to Walmart to buy me some clean undershirts. And even on the way to the hospital, as we're waiting for the paramedics to arrive, she reminded me to button up my shirt because there was a stain on my undershirt underneath. It was for the paramedics, right? When I was a teenager, I used to think those things were really superficial, not important things that she was concerned about, and that those things didn't really have anything to do with being a good person. But so I would roll my eyes about that, and I continued to do that. But as I got older and realized just how tough life can be, those little things are really important. And I realized in my mom's case that was a real expression of a deep and abiding character of caring about people and caring about the world around you and the impact that you have on the world in a inspiringly real way that I didn't always appreciate when I was younger. But going through the photos just really confirmed it to me, and the sad tragedy about life is it's hard to be objective about your parents, and then after they're gone, whatever you didn't know kind of comes into focus. And in Mom's case, it's just astonishing how deep it went with her. Like, for example, gratitude. Someone mentioned being grateful earlier. That word captures my mom so much, I think, as you all know. I don't know anyone who found out how to say thank you in more languages as she did. And she continued to surprise me throughout my life. Like, even coming back from the ear, nose, and throat appointment just last month, we're in the cab, and there's a Sikh driver, and I thought I was impressing him talking about Vaisakhi and how I like this celebration. And then when we get out to leave, she says thank you in Punjabi, and I'd never heard her say that before. Where did that come from? And she kept doing that. She never missed anyone's birthday. And, you know, even in the hospital, as she's suffering from this terrible affliction, she looks over at me, and Ben's there, and she says, "Oh my God, what am I going to get Dave for his birthday?"
Priorities.
Yeah. And she did suffer a lot, thankfully not as much as it could have been. But there was one point that was really difficult for me, and I just want to say something about that to her now. So I think the rest of my comments will be directed to her in this room with us. We were all kind of worried about you, Ben, and how difficult it was going to be for you to go through the end with Mom. And she was really worried about it too. And I remember telling her, well, you got to be brave for Ben, you know. And easy for me to say, right? Not at all fair. And at one point, as the pain was getting pretty bad, it was just her and I in the room, and she cried out and she said, I'm a coward. I'm a coward. I can't do this. And gratefully, that pain didn't last for long. She had really good care, and she made it through that. But I know I'm going to say a little bit to her what I should have said then. Somehow, she slipped into my possession a bucket list that she had. And on this bucket list, I'm not going to go through all the items. She wrote it just last year, and sadly, she didn't accomplish all the things on it. One of the things, the ultimate on her bucket list, which will tell you a little bit about her, was to teach Ben how to bake a turkey, which she did get to do. The second to last thing on her bucket list was to find out more about different religions of the world. And as I read that on her bucket list, I realized after she'd gone that, well, that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years, I think. And I feel like maybe she set me up to do that for her. But one of the things that I've found in exploring the different religions that have really brought me back to the same thing that I was taught at the church that I brushed aside as a teenager, is that there is this underlying story of goodness that is shared by all people in all faiths. And it has a few things in common, these virtues that were talked about today by Father McDonald. Virtues of being patient with each other, of having courage in fear, and of just making life a little more bearable by being kind and having some compassion for each other. And really, Mom, you were, and I thought here, I'm so smart that I figured out the world's problems, all these virtues, and thinking, well, yeah, everyone needs more virtue, but the truth is these things are all around us. And I didn't realize it, but my mom is like the best example of all of these virtues. And I didn't even realize it. I'm sorry I never got to tell you that, Mom. But everything you did, from the different ways of saying thank you, which were not at all superficial, that was a part of your character, and that's part of the glue that holds the world together, to the fact that you never missed anyone's birthdays, and the way you were the defender of Slovak culture and traditions, and to pass that on, and to be the historian of our family, and to build a treehouse. I mean, most people build a treehouse. Most treehouses get built and they get used as like a fortress to, protect boys from girls or something. That was not Mom's treehouse. Mom's treehouse was a focal point for the community. And she wasn't just a builder of treehouses, she was a builder of families and of community in such a profound way, from the way she contributed to, in those ways, to the bowling league that she was a part of for about 10 years for the Orphans Fund, the S&B. Everything you did was just amazing, Mom. And the truth is I never got to tell you this, but you're my hero. Thank you.
When I was doing the thank yous before and the welcomes from out of town, I did want to mention that our cousin Graham couldn't be here. He had planned from Connecticut. He's tending to his dad, our Uncle Norm, right now, who is resting, hopefully comfortably, in hospital. One of the nice voicemails I got earlier in the week actually came from Diana, my cousin, who was emoting about Auntie Julie. I guess you still call her that. And, Diane, you were so gracious on the phone when you left me the voicemail, and I'm sorry I missed you live, but it was something to the effect of, you described her as being a Disney princess. And I just thought that was just so perfect. I didn't know if that was, if you meant from your recollections back in the day, when you knew her when everybody was younger, or just wondering if, maybe that applied as much to today too. But thank you for that. That was just awesome. Ashley stepped out of the room. I guess okay. Are you okay? Yeah. One other story that Mom had written down, saw fit to recollect on, was the story that of how she was given her first Japanese orange when the family was in Brookmere. And it's a really cute story. I tried to read it out loud once at Christmas time, and I couldn't get through it in front of her. She wrote it about 20 years ago. And in the vein of Mumka and Auntie Julie, I'd ask both Allison and Ashley to co-read that page for us here.
Hello, my name is Allison Kelly. I am Tony's daughter. And I'm Ashley. I am Julie's granddaughter and BJ's daughter. And we have a story here that Mumka, Auntie Julie, wrote. And it's called Christmas Memories, and she wrote it in 1996. So we'll switch off back and forth. I remember them well, as they were very simple, but oh so memorable. My first Christmas in Canada was the year 1938, just before the war. We arrived from Czechoslovakia just a few days before Christmas to our humble 3-room bungalow in a place called Brookmere. It was a CPR town in the center of Kettle Valley Run, in the interior, The little town consisted of about 20 to 30 homes. Dad was a railroad man in the hungry 30s, so it was 8 long years before he could earn enough money for passage for Mom, my sister Adele, and myself to cross the Atlantic Ocean. We arrived in the middle of the night, and it was pretty mysterious for 2 8- and 9.5-year-old little girls coming from a foreign country. I remember how cold it was, as there was about 3 to 4 feet of snow on the ground. Our Slovak friends, who settled there a few years previous to Dad, brought us to their home as it was close to the station. No one had cars in this little village. The next morning, we moved on to our own little cottage about 1 mile down the train tracks. There were quite a few Japanese families living near us, and I remember them giving us our first Japanese orange. I remember smelling that orange before I ate it. The children were all so friendly, and even though we couldn't speak the language. Mom was quite shy in meeting the neighbors because of the language barrier, but Adele and I fit right in, enjoying the snow and the children. Our Christmas consisted of a simple tree without electric lights, but plenty of tinsel to make it shine, and a few decorations. I thought it was beautiful. Our Slovak friends came to celebrate with us, and I remember much merrymaking and joyful singing all day. I also sensed a feeling of relief in our parents that we were finally together and settled in beautiful and free Canadian soil. If you happen to see me in any produce department with the first shipment of Japanese oranges, don't laugh if I pick up an orange, close my eyes, and smell it, and relive the whole scene just exactly as it was in 1938. Life was simple then, but oh so wonderful. Thank you.
Folks, last thing I'd want to say is some of you might have noticed we've got a chair over here that's reserved for Mom. I don't know if you can see it over there. It's got blue, one of Mom's jackets draped atop, with some flowers and her picture. And we've done that because Mom was in this theater 3 times at least that I know of. And this a very beautiful and very versatile theater. These seats, initially we were going to have the chairs pulled forward and then halfway, and it would have been very easy to pick out the chair that Mom sat in with. And Warren and Shauna, you're right in the middle at the back there. We were at that show together in December. Colleen and Carla, others were here, and Andrea. And we were at that show in December, and Mom sat, which essentially would be that seat if things were turned around a bit. But it's the second seat in from the middle row. I'm always going to remember it. And I think I'll try and grab the aisle seat and keep that one next to me safe. So what we'd like to do might sound a little unusual, but I just want to say, with all my brothers here, for the beautiful way she lived her life, for the love she created in this world, for the friendships she fostered and cherished, for being a beautiful human being and sharing her lovely ways with all of us, everybody. Please join us in a strong and deeply heartfelt round of applause for Julia Doyle.
Thank you very much, everybody.